intro. All right. Let's do this shit. Hopefully our mics are loud enough and everything. If you want to plug your headset into your thing and listen to it live, then we'll know if I'm talking loud enough and shit. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, you ready? Oh, shit. It was recording that whole time. We're fucking up. Whatever.
That's a good one.
I don't even give a shit. What? Oh, all right. Welcome to the podcast, folks. Sorry for the delay. It seems like we say that every podcast, but you know what? What's life without a little bit of delay? I am Stephen Quinn. You can follow me on Twitter at CattyQuinn. I am also with my good friend Cody. You can find him on Twitter at Schwemc. That's SCHWEMC. I will be putting those links on the YouTube version of the video also. And to follow the movement, the Young Life P movement, Young Life Perception movement, you can follow us on Twitter at Team Young Life P. Right now you're watching us live, but you can also watch video podcasts commercial-free on YouTube. You just have to type in Young Life Perception on YouTube, and you can find that. Also, check out our website for the recorded podcast audio versions at www.younglifeperception.com. Also, we post blogs twice a week. You can find those younglifeperception.wordpress.com. All right, we're right. God damn it. Sorry about that. Kind of cut us off for a second. But if you want to also find some other places, some other great apps to listen to our podcast, you can check out Stitcher Radio. It's kind of a new thing. It's not bad. I got it on my iPhone. I use it a couple times. But I do prefer iTunes. You can also find us on iTunes. Another great place. You just download the podcast straight to your iPhone and just save it for later or listen to it in the car. Really great place to listen to the audio versions of our podcast. If you missed us live, or if you just are more of a visual learner, you can look at us on YouTube. Tonight we have Personality Podcast Revisited. The reason why it's called Revisited is because we did do a podcast earlier on personalities. It was a pretty long time ago. It was probably podcast 10 or so, 13, not too sure the exact number, but we do recommend that you check that one out first. You might get a little lost if you don't know too much about personalities. What else is there? I hate doing introductions. Basically, some of the things that are going to be mentioned on this show, we're going to talk a lot about our mistakes that we made determining our personalities. That's probably going to get pretty deep. We're going to talk about the real definition of small talk, which took us a while to figure out. It sounds like, it's something easy to figure out, but really it's kind of difficult. And basically we're going to be talking about the feeling of discovering your true personality and realizing that, the one that you thought was right was wrong. And we're also going to teach you some techniques. We're going to actually try to teach you. So by the end of this podcast, you're going to be almost, I shouldn't say expert, but you're going to feel pretty comfortable about personalities when we're done with this. And we basically have a fun game at the end called You Might Be an Introvert If. Kind of stole that from something, but we won't mention that. And questions and answers at the end. Thank God this intro is done. Cody?
Yes,
Since
sir.
we're going to have some new people here.
Oh, that was tight, dude. I wish they could have seen that.
Basically, since we're going to have new people here who probably haven't learned about personalities very much, go ahead and we'll run down some basics of personalities real quick.
All right, yeah. So I'll run over some ground rules and basically backgrounds of personalities. Number one, personalities were researched by Carl Jung in the 1920s. His official theory was released in 1921. Number 2, it is the most, it is the most popular personality tool used for jobs. That's what almost every employer you go to is going to use in order to assess how well people are going to do in the job.
Yeah, it should be used a lot more, but it only seems to be used.
I mean,
in
it's
jobs.
like to get hired in, you use it, and then it's just, well, we're going to ignore that information now.
I'd almost rather like the Libra and Leo shit switched with the job. Like, honestly, I'd rather have people care about these more than the Leo. Libra,
Oh yeah, those are, what are those called?
Astrology or something.
Yeah,
whatever. Fuck it.
Yeah. All right, number 3, personalities indicate preference and not behavior. That simply means that naturally, as human beings, we are going to prefer some things over others, and this is an indication of preference. What you would prefer. If you prefer being structured, then you are probably going to want to assume that you're a judge. So now all right, anyway, sorry about that. Number 4, we exhibit all functions. So whether it is thinking, sensing, intuition, or feeling, we all exhibit those. It just depends on which ones we prefer most and which ones start developing early on in life. Number 5, there are 4 basic outlooks on life, and we call those temperaments. Number 6.
It's just a little delayed.
Each temperament contains 4 cousin personalities. So we have 4 temperaments. We have 4 cousin personalities in each of them. So number 7, 4 temperaments with 4 personalities comes out to be 16 total personalities. We can take a look at those real quick. Oh, there they are. All right, back over to the rules. And the last thing is that no preference can be considered right. Even though society rewards some preferences, it comes down to whatever society thinks is the most valuable. In the American culture, you'll see that people who are extroverted and people who are outgoing are rewarded with better jobs, and they have a lot more opportunities, whereas in Japan, people who are introverted are considered to be right. They get rewarded for being introverted. So 2 completely different countries do it 2 completely different ways. How can you say which one is right? You can't.
I think number 8 is probably one of the most important rules out of all of them for people to understand.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Going into personalities, there's no preferences considered right. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, but sometimes I think it's the most confused one.
For sure.
And you said, I don't know if you did say in here, but you're a mixture of everyone. Like, you can't just be completely intuition, or completely sensor. And that's, some people think, oh, I'm a sensor, but sometimes then they go, well, sometimes I feel like I have some intuition. You do.
Yeah,
You
everybody
have both.
has.
It's just
all
what
the
you
functions.
prefer. So I guess we're going to be going into another. Basically, what they saw a glimpse of was the chart we created.
Yeah.
Back for the first personality podcast we did. Basically for us, we didn't show it because obviously it was an audio podcast, but I think we might have included some of them in a blog or something.
Yeah, we included some personality charts and blogs. We'll be using those same ones tonight. It's going to be a little bit more of a presentation than normal. We think that it's going to work out really good. We have some cool charts to compare, and it actually helps a lot with understanding personality types.
Yeah, basically we're trying to make this a big teaching experience, I guess. Trying to be teachers for the first time ever.
Yeah.
No more bashing them because we're in the hot seat now. So basically we're going to go on to some similarities and differences, and we're going to be comparing just 2 that we picked from our chart, right?
Yeah.
So I'll bring that chart up here.
All right. Now, when you look at it, you're going to see personality A and personality B. Now, the main point that we want to drive home here right now is that people will say, some days I feel like I'm an ESTJ, and some days they'll say I feel like I'm an ESTP. Well, if you look at these charts that we have, if you look on the left-hand side, the ESTJ, or the supervisor personality, you'll see that thinking is underneath the word extroverted. So extroverted thinking is the dominant function. It's the big blue bar on the left side chart. And that is going to be the dominant function of that personality type. Then if you look to the left, you'll see the green bar. And that right there is introverted, and it represents sensing. So you can see that the dominant personality type functions of this type are extroverted thinking and introverted sensing. But then you go over to the right side, and you'll see that extroverted sensing and introverted thinking are the top functions. So those are completely flip-flopped.
Yeah, so it's not just a matter of J or P. Like, you're completely flipping your personality, and you're taking away what your strongest point is and saying, no, it's not the strongest point, it's the second strongest point. And we're going to get into later on how much of a difference that actually really makes.
Yeah, definitely.
And I mean, you're making, not only are you taking it from most dominant to second dominant by switching them, you're flipping them. You're switching it from extroverted thinking to introverted thinking.
So it's literally,
which is a completely different thing.
A mirror personality, yes.
So it's important to understand these charts, and that's basically what we're trying to show people is like these charts are very, very useful.
Yeah,
I use them all the time.
You know, while they're up, while we're taking a look at it, look at ESTJ, the personality A. You're going to see introverted sensing, and what that is bringing in a bunch of raw data and facts and storing them, and these people are more past-oriented. They look to the past in order to make their decisions today. They rely on experience and past experience that they've had in just about any field, and they respect authority, and you know, that's what introverted sensing does, essentially. And then you look over at ESTP, personality B, and extroverted sensing is about being very aware of the surrounding environment, bringing in data through your eyes, your ears, your nose, your touch. Everything that you bring in, you can understand the cause and effect relationships of it. And it's very invigorating for this type to be able to see the cause of something and be able to react so quickly that it's just using their reflexes and not even letting their mind think. It's just pure instinct, and they thrive on that, and they love that feeling. So you can see that these are two completely different types, and it's just by one letter.
Yeah, and when you get more developed, like when you're in your 30s or 40s, now it's not just your most dominant functions at the top that you can switch. You can also switch your feeling.
Mm-hmm.
It's your third, which is still plays a very important role in your life, especially at our age, it definitely does.
Yeah.
And maybe the fourth one, I think it's like 35 or something. It starts rounding out or something, 40.
Yep.
And
so
then you're going to switch those.
Yeah.
Like, you're switching the whole thing.
Yeah, and the way that works is between 6 and 12 years of age, you start developing your primary function, your first function, that biggest bar on the chart. And your second function starts coming in between ages 13 and 21. So that's going to be developing around those times. But then from about 22 to 35, you're going to start having your third biggest function come into play in your personality. And then between ages 35 and 50, your fourth function is going to start growing and improving and making you a more well-rounded out person. So it's over the course of 50 years that your personality type is developing. And this chart kind of puts it into perspective about what that's like.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not looking at the chart, all you see is a letter difference.
Right.
That's it.
So, I mean, it's crazy. Now, we can look at this and we can see that the intuition and the feeling is on the bottom, but there are going to be some charts where that's on the top. It can be either introverted intuition or extroverted intuition, introverted thinking, extroverted thinking. You get the idea. So,
would you like me to bring up your chart?
Yeah, bring up my chart real quick.
Okay. Let's take a look at Cody.
All right. So, obviously, well, not obviously, but I thought that I was an ENTJ. If you look at the mistaken personality on the left-hand side. Now, when I was looking at mine, it was, you know, you look at these two personality types, and off first glance, they don't look that different. But when you look at it, you can see that the introverted intuition of ENTJ, you look over at INTJ, and that's the dominant function. It's the secondary function in the ENTJ, the leader executive type. So when you're analyzing these two, the biggest difference is early on in life, because early in life, the ENTJ is going to have extroverted thinking. So they're going to be focused mainly on making things happen in the real world. And they're going to be very logical and analytical in every way that they approach something. Now that the INTJ, the mastermind personality, has introverted intuition. So from an early age, they're going to be perceiving, and they're going to be trying to understand the world while making connections, almost like a giant framework, connecting all of the dots that seem unrelated. They pick one thing to get good at, and then they just stick with it. They don't do a whole bunch of things at one time. It's more of understanding, perceiving, and then acting later. Sometimes they're very slow to act.
I mean, once again, when you look at the chart, it doesn't look like much changes. But, you know, switching the two top and the two bottom with each other is a huge difference.
Yeah.
Someone who has a very dominant introverted intuition is going to be really smart, and he's going to think a lot to himself. Mm-hmm. Whereas an ENTJ obviously is going to be a little more extrovert about things. So it kind of does make sense when you look at them. You know, INTJ, of course they're going to have a stronger, more dominant, it's going to be more dominant introverted intuition than extroverted thinking, because he's an INTJ. Mm-hmm. He's introverted.
Yeah.
So his most dominant function has to be introverted. Mm-hmm. And that's a big giveaway for ENTJ and INTJ. And when you look at the charts, it makes it more real for you. And I just, you know, someone who has dominant introverted intuition, it seems like it'd be rather obvious that that person's, you know, very introvert. So if you're expressing introverted intuition in everyday life, I guess, I'm hanging out with you all the time. Mm-hmm. Like, I should have noticed that your introverted intuition was very, very high. Mm-hmm. And how high that is determines whether or not you're ENTJ or INTJ.
Right.
In a way. But that's kind of a harder way to look at it.
Yeah.
And that's why it's good to learn these charts, because the charts are actually going to help you a lot more than just being like, oh, is he an ENTJ or an INTJ?
Yeah.
You know, it like breaks it down and gives you people like me a visual.
Right. For sure. So why don't you flip to your chart really quick so we can take a look at that. So on this chart, you can tell you were kind of stuck between a couple personality types. You thought you were an ENFJ. It turned out you were INFP. And
then there was a time where I thought I was INFJ.
Yeah. So, you know, I mean, you knew that you were a visionary, an idealist, whatever you want to call it. That was your temperament. And you kind of bounced around personality types within that temperament, which I think is going to be very common for a lot of people. They're going to hit a temperament that sounds like them, but then they have to pinpoint that cousin personality that they are. So if you look on the mistaken personality, that you were an ENFJ, so you had an E and a J for extroverted and judge. And then on your INFP profile, which is your actual personality type, you were introverted and a perceiver. So instead of EJ, you had IP in your personality type. There's NF in both of them. So when I look at this, I notice that this is a completely mirrored personality type. They are literally exactly opposite on every single spectrum. Where you have extroverted feeling in the ENFJ, you have introverted feeling in the INFP. Where you have introverted intuition in the ENFJ, you have extroverted intuition on the INFP. They're literally complete opposites. But the place where I feel like you got confused was you were looking at the 4 letters and not considering so much the function stack.
Yeah, I'm not looking at the chart. I mean, it's so much easier now looking at the chart and saying, oh, why did I think I was that? Because now I know. It's almost like a curse of knowledge in a way. Mm-hmm. But looking at it now, it's like, I am definitely not extroverted feeler. So right there tells you you're an INFP. You know, that's one thing I would look at. Another thing I would look at is my intuition. extroverted intuition. I had to look at that very deep and figure out. For the longest time, I thought I had introverted intuition. So I think it's important that we discuss, Cody and I, the real difference between introverted intuition and extroverted intuition. Because now we know that I have the extroverted intuition and you have the introverted intuition. So I think maybe you should talk a little bit about what thought processes go through your head when we sit down. Like, here's a good example. When we sit down and have a business meeting and we're trying to come up with a goal, you know, what's going through your mind as a person with introverted intuition?
Well, when we sit down for this meeting, you have extroverted intuition, which is, you know, kind of that explosion of ideas. And when you have this huge brainstorming session of ideas that just gets shot out into the external world by you saying them, my mind kind of grabs onto them and pulls them in. And internally, I work on it. Even if it doesn't feel like I'm thinking about it, I am thinking about it, because it's just crazy. I will be working on something in my mind without being consciously aware of it. And then one day it just hits me like a ton of bricks, because introverted intuition is heavily symbolic. And when it's inside of my mind and I'm trying to work something out, it's in there and the gears are turning, but sometimes I'm not even consciously aware of it. And when it just comes to, it almost feels like the thought was transmitted to me, because it's just so developed and it just comes out. Because I have extroverted thinking. I have introverted thinking for my dominant function, and the process that I go through is that I have to take those symbolic thoughts that are so abstract and use my introverted thinking in order to decipher them into logical meaning that I can articulate to another individual.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. So people who kind of relate to what you just said might have introverted intuition.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to figure out if you have introverted intuition or extroverted intuition.
If you have introverted intuition, chances are you're going to be stuck inside of your head a lot of the time, especially if it's dominant introverted intuition. It's almost like your own little world. It's imaginary, and it's about connecting dots that don't really, a lot of people can't see. It's about looking towards the future and trying to predict future trends and holding patterns inside of your head to form a model so that you can kind of guess what this future trend is going to hold. And it's very long-term oriented. I'm very skeptical, slow, and cautious about a lot of things. And it's just because with introverted intuition, when I get an idea, I find ways to back it up with facts, because that's connecting dots. That's naturally what I do without even trying. So then if somebody tries to give me an opinion or they try and tell me a fact, if it doesn't go with what's inside of my head, those dots that I've already created, a lot of times I'm very skeptical. And it makes me more slow moving, but it makes me more careful when I'm doing.
Yeah, so you're almost like a sponge. You're just absorbing.
Yes.
And you're waiting for that moment where someone just pretty much squeezes you before the ideas come out. Mm-hmm. And, basically when we start this business meeting, now that I know I have extroverted intuition, it'd be NE, I guess. Mm-hmm. Now that I know I have that, I come into the business meeting with ideas on paper already. I spill it all out, And there was times where I was like, all right, Cody, just spill out some ideas.
Yeah.
Boy, how confused we were back then.
Right.
But, now I know my role. Now I know what my job is, and I don't have to worry about what your strength is.
Right.
I'm going to put in my strength. My strength is an explosion of ideas. It's almost like I see all these different ideas in the air, and your job is to grab them. Your job is to grab which ones you think would work. But I'm just spitting them out. Sometimes it pisses people off because I'm just spitting the ideas out there. I'm not saying they're right or they're wrong. I'm just showing you them.
Generating possibilities.
Yeah, and I love doing that. It's just, that's what I do, I guess. So if someone comes to me with an argument, or if you said this is the way it is, I'm shooting possibilities out. It doesn't matter if, I could agree with what you said, but I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to spit out all the possibilities to see if you thought about all of them. Another thing might happen is you might say something to me, and then I'm like, what? And then I keep spitting out more ideas. So sometimes it might feel like to me, it might feel like you're a little bit behind on what I'm saying. It's just because I'm spitting them all out at once. I'm going 100 miles an hour, spitting out all these ideas, and you're just trying to absorb them. And you might need a day to think about them.
Mm-hmm.
And you might ask questions, and then I'll be like, I just said that, or I just spit that out. Here's that. And I can give you an answer right away. And then I'd be in the business meeting, and I would say, all right, Cody, now that you have all that information, what's your ideas? What are you going to contribute to this? How do you want to organize it? Blah, 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 blah. And sometimes you would just be like, well, and that's just how I think a person with introverted intuition would speak. And if I would have known early on that you had introverted intuition, I would have been like, here's all my ideas on paper, which we did with this podcast, and it worked out brilliantly. Here's all my ideas, so you don't have to necessarily make this whole page of ideas. You can look at them, absorb them, and think about them for a day.
Right.
And the longer you have to absorb it and think about it, the better you're going to come up with the better the option you're going to come up with.
Right.
And if we're sitting in a business meeting, you're put under pressure to come up with good quality ideas on the spot, which you can do. But is it going to be the best idea? No. So me learning about the fact that I had extroverted intuition and not introverted intuition actually helped out our relationship as business partners and as friends tremendously.
For sure. And another thing, too, is that I'm very good at establishing potential pitfalls of plans. I'm very strategic, so I'm good at pointing out a spot far out in the future and then kind of figuring out the big leaps and bounds we have to take to get there. I'm not so good with the tactical part of actually doing it. That'd be more of a creator's job or experiencer, whatever you want to call them. For me, my introverted intuition makes it so that I am very anxious at sometimes because I have an idea in the back of my mind that I can't articulate yet because it's in that stage where my extroverted thinking hasn't figured it out. So it's really weird sometimes because I'll be going along my day and I'll feel like there's something that is in my mind that I can't figure out, and it's just all day, and it'll be at the most random point in time. I'll see the most random thing on TV, just connect one dot, and then it's just this bum rush of all of these thoughts that I've had, and it just hits me like a ton of bricks, sometimes so hard that I can't do anything until I write it down. It's that important to me, and it usually feels like it's going to be a couple lines that I write down. Sometimes I've sat down and written as many as 4 pages at one time. College ruled notebook paper, single spaced. I just kept going and going and going and going and going. And then I stopped and I looked at my page and I was like, no wonder I felt anxious.
It's good that you actually said that because you said that you felt overwhelmed because there was too much information in your head, so you wrote it all down. Mm-hmm. That's how I feel almost every day, all the time.
Yeah.
I feel like it's never-ending explosion of ideas every day. And sometimes it's very overwhelming to have an explosion of ideas on every little thing I think about. I think about econ class, explosion of ideas. I think about this mouse, explosion of ideas. It seems like it's always running until I go to sleep.
Yeah.
Which is very relaxing.
Yeah.
I think that's probably why I sleep so well, and a lot of people have sleeping problems, but my mind has been racing the whole day. That when it's time to lay down, I'm out. I'm feeling great.
Another thing that I was saying, you were talking about how I have an explosion of ideas to ask people if they thought about this or if they thought about that or all of that stuff. And you know what I'm talking about? How you were saying earlier, like you have this.
I was saying like you just said that it builds up. And then all of a sudden you have this idea and you feel like you need to write it down.
No, I'm talking about when you said that you have this explosion of ideas, and when somebody makes a suggestion, you'll feel like they're kind of behind, and then you'll just keep making suggestions to see if they thought about certain things.
Yeah, like I'll just keep exploding it out, but someone with introverted intuition might not necessarily be behind, but they're not expressing that they're at where I'm at right now. So it feels like I can go farther.
Right.
And then they'll say things like, well, what about this? I already have that. Just let me keep putting it out. Like sometimes it feels like I've already had all that thought out sometimes, before when the person with introverted intuition starts talking, or like, what did you think about this? Yeah, it's right here, and I just keep going, you know. But eventually, I'm gonna wear out, and that's when you come in. Someone with introverted intuition comes in and absorbs everything I said, and then a day later, you would be able to come up to me and go, "You think about this?" And I would be like, "No."
Right.
But at that moment, I feel like the ideas I'm coming up with are blowing away the introverted intuition right now. And I don't think someone with introverted intuition would, obviously they wouldn't be able to keep up with shooting out all those ideas. And you have to understand that could cause a lot of problems in the business world.
Right.
Or in a relationship or anything. If I'm sitting here blowing you up with ideas, which I'm doing right now,
yeah.
you have to know to sit back and say, like if I didn't know you had introverted intuition, then I would expect you to come up with all the ideas I'm coming up with.
Right.
I think about school. You're working on a project, and the teacher's like, "All right, group, come up with 10 things." I'm gonna come up with 10 things, and I'm gonna go, "Cody, you didn't do any work."
Right.
Think about that. That's crazy. I didn't even think about that. It's like your group has to come up with 10 examples. I came up with 10, easy. Didn't phase me at all. You might come up with like 3, and you're like, "I need some more time."
Right.
And I'd be like, "Come on, you didn't do any of the work." You might come in a day later with 10 better ones than me.
Right.
That's what I'm like trying to say.
Yeah.
Is we just spit them out. Sometimes we don't even care if it even makes sense. It's an idea, and we spit it out. And that's the way that someone with extroverted intuition thinks. They think that spitting out more quantity is better.
Because
and you're about quality.
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly.
And you can almost like, in a way, when I spit out quantity, you look at those and say, "These are quality. Let me come up with some more quality ones."
Right.
Like
and
I feel like you're able to look at it and be like, "Some of these are junk."
Right.
And sometimes you tell me that. So, and it works, and I accept it because I know your role and I know my role.
Right. And another thing is like, so you were talking about how you can just come up with all these possibilities to see if people have thought of things. And my particular strength in that area is identifying certain pitfalls of longer term strategies. So, if I put a point in time, like let's say a year from now, and we have to have a systematic way to get there, and we have certain goals we have to meet and all of those things, I'm good at like seeing potential pitfalls and then making a plan for when that might happen. So it's contingency planning. It's actually spotting out real life problems that could occur, and if they do, then we can go to this plan. And there's going to be a few of those along the way, and if you can identify those, it's going to take longer to plan, but it's going to be executed more flawlessly.
And let's say we're talking about some business idea that's very complex, and there might be a lot of argument with that, because at that time I might think the idea that I just came up with is perfect and will last. And you might know in your head it's not going to last.
Mm-hmm.
There's flaws in it.
Mm-hmm.
And if I didn't know that what your role was, I would argue with you and say, "No, it's going to work."
Right.
Like, I've thought about all these things, and you might not have, you might see the flaw, but you might not be able to articulate it right away like I can. And then I have to let you take it and think about it for a week.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'd be like, "Here's why it doesn't work." And then I'd be like, "Oh, shit.
Right.
I didn't even think about that." So, really, what better team to have than someone with extroverted intuition and introverted intuition?
Right. When we need to bring someone on the team, we can get either a creator or we can get a guardian, and they'll have sensing that will keep all of our ideas grounded, because sometimes our ideas aren't grounded. We're both intuitive, so we're both abstract, and sometimes we get on board with a plan that might not necessarily be as realistic as we think it is. So having a sensor there could look at it and say, "Well, I'll believe it when I see
Are you
it."
trying to build a castle in the clouds? That's the famous saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad we got real into the introverted intuition, because that was one that I thought I had introverted intuition for the longest time.
Right.
And it's really awesome to know that I don't, because now it helps me. Now I
Yeah.
know what my strength is. Now I know what I'm good at.
Mm-hmm.
So that's very important to have too, and it helps out with school. Honestly, I'm doing great in school. I don't know if you're doing great in school, but
Yeah.
School seems a lot easier for me.
It does.
And it might be because we've been learning all this stuff. Who knows? Like, school feels really easy now.
Really, really easy.
Yeah, compared to the stuff that we've had to do, in short amount of time, I guess. But we talked about introverted intuition and extroverted intuition. And I think there was one more that kind of confused us.
Well, in the real world, when you're looking at, for instance, someone with introverted feeling and somebody, bring your chart back up. We can look at how you have introverted feeling. It actually shows in the real world, if you look between a thinker and you look at a feeler, a thinker is going to have less facial expressions when they're talking. It's going to be more impersonal. It's going to have just an impersonal feel to it because they're using logic and analysis and not considering the people involved. They're more objective when they think about things. But if you look at somebody with introverted feeling, they keep their feelings inside, and their facial features can look like a thinker. It can literally look like one. So if it looks like a thinker, and so let's say you're an introverted feeler and somebody comes up to you and says you're a thinker, you can't just believe them off the first thing that you hear because chances are you may have introverted feeling and somebody just misinterpreted that as you being a thinker because of how you look in the real world.
Yeah, that's very important. It's very important you should listen to what people have to say, but in the end, you have to figure out what you are. And someone could easily say, I'm an extroverted feeler, and they don't know. Someone who doesn't know me very well, who's been studying personalities, could easily say I'm an extroverted feeler.
Mm-hmm.
Or someone who's been studying for a little bit longer would think I'm a thinker. I don't know if it'd be introverted thinker or extroverted thinker, but anyway, it would probably be extroverted thinking because I'd actually be introverted feeling. But I'm not going to try to confuse everyone right now. But basically, I'm introverted feeling.
So let's actually look where we went wrong. Go back to mine real quick. I want to take a look at, if you look at ENTJ, which is the personality type on the left-hand side, why don't we go ahead and explain some things about the ENTJ? Because I really thought that I was extroverted just because I can talk so much and I can do a podcast for an hour.
I just clicked on the wrong one. Sorry.
Oh, it's all good. But the thing is, I thought that I was a leader because when my mom got my 7 little brothers and sisters, obviously not all at the same time, but she adopted them, and I have a single mom, so it's like I kind of had to step up and be almost the man of the house in a sense, and I had to help take care of all the kids, and I had work that I had to do, but I'd also have to delegate to them sometimes, and it felt like that it just kind of put me in the leadership mindset because I had to lead my little brothers and sisters when my mom was gone, and I had to do that quite a bit. 7 kids is a lot if you didn't know. So, you look at ENTJ, though, and they judge and then they perceive. They have a judging function. Feeling and thinking are both judging functions, and it's basically you telling yourself how you feel about something, and it's either by using logic or your feeling logic. There's thinking logic and then there's feeling logic, and they're both right. People tend to think that the thinking logic is more accurate, but that's not true. They're both logical processes. Intuition and sensing are perception functions, so they're how we understand our world. It's how we bring in information, how we essentially understand the world. They're going to indicate more of how you see the world. So an ENTJ is going to judge and then perceive. They're often very pushy, very bossy, but they're efficient at making things happen in the real world. But you look at the INTJ, which is me, and it's more of a perceive then judge. I absorb things and think about them, and then I will judge them using my extroverted thinking. And it's not a process that I can really help because it takes me a while to process things and to actually fully understand them, but it's usually because I'm just trying to connect so many dots at the same time that my mind doesn't fully understand it. Now, Often quiet and reserved. That's me, unless there's something that I really feel is important to talk about, like personality types on this podcast. And I'm good at planning, but I'm slow to take action sometimes. So I thought that as I got older, as an ENTJ, I would just get better at making things happen in the real world. And I will, because my extroverted thinking of my INTJ personality is going to get bigger as I get older. But I haven't been doing that my whole life. And if I was an ENTJ, I would have been trying to make more things happen rather than just sit back and absorb information like a sponge and not necessarily care about what action I take.
So you feel like you let everyone know exactly why you were wrong?
That's why I was wrong. And the point cannot be stressed enough. We literally studied this stuff. But the problem is when you are emotionally vested within something, you can be blind to certain aspects of yourself. And I'm sure Steve, as well as me, we looked at it and we were like, we're not introverted. We're extroverted for sure.
Oh, yeah. We'll be getting into me real quick.
Yeah. And, that's it's something that I think a lot of people do. I think one of the biggest problems is the confusion about introversion and extroversion. Extroversion is simply that you are recharged by the outer world of activities, places, things, and people. But if you're introverted, you are energized by your inner world of thoughts, ideas, memories, and feelings.
Awesome. So now we're going to go to me. I'm going to try to explain this to the best of my ability. But it's not going to be in the same way as Cody.
Right.
Because I'm a feeler.
Yes.
It's going to be more visual, things like that. But I thought I was an ENFJ in the beginning. I went around and acted, well, at least tried to act like an ENFJ. And it's actually very obvious now that I know that I'm not an ENFJ. First of all, I have a very hard time expressing feelings. Now, if I was an ENFJ, I would be able to express my feelings very well. And I realized, I struggle with that a lot. So that was one hint that I might be INFP, is because I've had people tell me, like, I don't know what's going on with you. I don't know what you're thinking, and I'll try to explain it, and I can't. And I kind of want to meet an ENFJ, so I know what it is. I don't know if they're like really emotional or something. You know how I always told you I thought I had a thinking side? That's a big thing right here. Is I thought I was treating women, I thought I was acting like a thinker towards women.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, what it was that I was confused about was I have introverted feeling, so I can't express my feelings very well. It wasn't because, I had high thinking. It's because I had introverted feeling.
Yeah.
And that's what I got confused on a lot. And I, seeing natural mentor, it made me think that I was that also, but it's important not to get that confused because I see this as a teacher. A mentor is kind of a teacher, but it's natural. That's a key word right there, natural. It's not natural to me. I can give people guidance, but it's not something I can easily do in front of a class. And that was something that kind of confused me as well. Good at developing others, I can do that too, but am I good at it? That's another key word. Am I good at it? No, I find myself getting rather frustrated if people don't figure it out right away.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, look at ENFJ. That person has introverted intuition. I don't see someone with introverted intuition actually getting that upset with somebody. And if they have extroverted feeling, I don't see that. That's a perfect teacher right there. That's someone who's not getting upset when someone's not understanding something right away. INFP, I could see that happening.
Mm-hmm.
I have extroverted intuition. I'm going to shoot out all these ideas. Sounded kind of weird. I'm going to shoot out all these ideas. And if you're not learning it, I can't express to you. Now I'm battling how to express it to you that you're not learning it. Yeah. Now I'm probably yelling at you because I don't know how to express feeling in the right way all the time. I'm a really nice guy, but that's because I have introverted feeling. I keep it to myself.
Right.
But the thing that I love about this now is that it says teacher and it says dreamer. And now You can look at teacher, dreamer. What's the biggest difference between those? And you look at yourself and you say, am I really a teacher? Do I really like going up in front of the class? Do I really like small talk? Do I really have patience when someone's not learning something? You know, can I express my opinions and beliefs? There's another thing. Can I express what I've learned very, very well? I don't think so. Not in a feeling sense. Not at all.
And you know how you used to tell me, you were like, I can feel what other people are feeling, and it's a subconscious process. I don't even have to think about it. We confuse that with extroverted feeling, but I think what it was is you have this introverted feeling side that is so strong that all it takes is one gesture from another person, and you are so hyper aware of your feelings and your opinions that when you see it in them, you can relive it inside of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not so much that you are just good at spotting that, but you're good at feeling it inside, internally, because you have that introverted feeling side.
Yeah, and now it's even perfect that we have these three things describing INFP. Okay, first one, natural mediator. Kind of goes along with number 2 also. But I can naturally keep harmony. So ENFJ and INFP, I mean, they still want harmony.
Mm-hmm.
But who's the one who's keeping it? Honestly, I think it's the INFP the most.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they probably approach it in different ways.
Yeah.
But the INFP is doing it subtly, whereas ENFJ is like, hey, let's be nice to each other. Whereas I'm like, I'm just going to eliminate the problem in a subtle way.
Yeah.
It's not going to be obvious when an INFP is doing it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big thing. That's a big difference between ENFJ and INFP.
Yeah.
And then talented at gaining goodwill through pleasing acts. I mean, yeah, I agree with that. I mean, this is the one that confuses people. People think I'm an extroverted feeler. It confused myself. I thought I was an extroverted feeler because I'm talented at gaining goodwill through pleasing acts. So I thought me going out and doing good acts was me being an extroverted feeler. I'll buy things for she's ex-girlfriend now. I'll buy things for a girlfriend, and think I'm an extroverted feeler. No, it's completely different.
Yeah.
Doing that's a very good sentence right there that you put in there. Pleasing acts.
Yep.
That's not expressing your opinions and beliefs. That's just doing nice things.
Yes.
And you can still be an introverted feeler and still do nice things. You're not extroverted. You're introverted. And it's honestly, even when I still look at this, I can see why I got confused.
Mm-hmm.
It seems obvious to me, but someone else looking at this who hasn't studied it, that could be pretty confusing. Those are pretty damn close. And mindful and observant, yeah, that's it. All three of those go really well together.
Mm-hmm.
Mindful and observant. I'm always paying attention to things. I might not always express how I feel about certain things going on, but I'm always watching. Like, it's creepy, but I'm watching everything. I'm seeing how people interact with other people, and I'm determining whether or not that person's a threat to harmony in the future, or how I'm going to disable that person, a.k.a. be a natural mediator.
And that's
I
your
guess.
judging function acting first. Every single time you see something, you were just saying, you will notice somebody and you will decide if they're going to be a threat by how they're acting. And it's natural because you have introverted feeling as your dominant function. So you're going to have a judging function first, and then your extroverted intuition is going to sort it out after you make a judgment about it. So it's like you judge first, and then you reflect on the decision that you had or the opinion that you had, and then you learn from that whether it was right or wrong. And then once you learn and you figure out what's right, then you'll know that it's right next time.
Mm-hmm. And the important thing is when you want to learn if you're ENFJ or INFP, you have to, if you can't remember, which you probably will be able to remember because you have intuition, but every event that happens, if you can't remember it, write it down in a journal. Every situation that you think will help you learn if you're extroverted feeler or introverted feeler, because right there, that determines if you're ENFJ or INFP. You just have to pick one, really.
Mm-hmm.
If you're stuck between these two, just pick feeling and try to figure out, am I introverted or extroverted on feeling? That's all you really have to look at. Or you can look at just extroverted, introverted people. But if you're still stuck, go to the feeling and really look at feeling. That's your most dominant one.
Yeah.
either way, right?
Yeah.
So if that's your most dominant one, that's the one you're most comfortable with. That's the one that you're dealing with almost every day. You are dealing with every day. But it's the biggest part of your life. So it should be the easiest one for you to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very difficult for me to figure out. But all I had to do was take some time, look at all the things that happened, you know, whatever it is, like at work, in a relationship, with Cody, at a meeting. What's going on? What are you thinking about? What are you naturally trying to do all the time? And, you know, once you study that, honestly, when I was done studying that, I feel 10 times smarter.
Right.
From just doing, like, observing.
And honestly, what you were saying earlier, you can be introverted and you can go through and do your pleasing acts as an INFP, but you can mistake that for an ENFJ because you're introverted. So you're going to feel like you say some things that you don't because you think about it so much inside of your head. So you knew clearly what your intentions were, and you may not have always articulated that. So it could feel like you were going out of your way and being an extroverted feeler, but at the same time, you were just doing pleasing acts and then taking your own thoughts as if other people knew them, maybe without even knowing that.
Yeah, and a lot of it was other people saying, dude, you know, you're a feeler, like you're really nice. So I started assuming I was extroverted about it. It only took me trying to figure out if I really was extroverted to decide that I was INFP. Nobody came up to me and said, Steven, you're wrong, you're an INFP. Everybody I talked to said, you're an ENFJ, good job, you found it. If I wouldn't have sat down and said, I don't know if I'm ENFJ, let me look into it and study for like a month about it, I never would have found it out.
And we should have known you weren't a judge right then, because if you were,
yeah, the judge is that's what's really stupid. But it's just funny how you can go around thinking that you're something and you're not. You're like completely opposite.
Right. Completely.
And that's a good transition into what we want to talk about next. And that's how did we feel that day? That was a pretty big day.
Where you figured it out like a couple days before me, but it
was probably at night, and I was freaking out because I didn't want to wake you up and call you. But it's like one of those times like I need to fucking call Cody, and I just had to say the F word, whatever. I need to call Cody, and talk to him about what I just found out.
Right.
Because this is crazy.
And what's crazy is that whenever we were talking about our personality types, I was ENTJ, you were ENFJ, and I would assume, in my mind, it reaffirmed that I was extroverted because I looked at how you acted and how I acted, and I assumed that you were an extrovert because you acted kind of like me and I kind of acted like you. And it just felt like we were both extroverted because we did podcasts. So it was kind of like that combination worked against us at the time. But now that we have it figured out, it has us feeling twice as smart than we did before.
Yeah, and that was probably the most mind-blowing thing, was finding out we were introvert and not extrovert. And to describe the feeling, I guess, of pretty much realizing that what you were living is almost it's a lie, and you were trying to be like, I was trying to be an ENFJ.
Mm-hmm.
And mine's probably a little more of a significant feeling than yours because yours didn't change very much.
Right.
Yours biggest change was E to I, right?
Mm-hmm.
Extrovert to introvert.
Yep.
Mine was like everything flipped, And when I learned that I was INFP, I felt like as soon as I realized I was INFP, this is weird. As soon as I realized I was INFP, I felt like, whatever you want to call it, a monkey, a rock, whatever you want to call it, fell off.
Yeah.
I was really happy.
Yeah.
And my mind was blown.
Yeah.
And I was in shock that whole day. I didn't even think it was real life. It sounds kind of nerdy, but when you've been studying this for like 4 months and you come up with your personality and then you believe that personality for like 2 months, and then you find out you were wrong. That's humbling as shit.
Yeah.
And then I'm going out and I'm acting like an ENFJ. I'm acting like an extrovert, and I'm acting like how a teacher would act normally, and thinking I have introverted intuition, right?
And it was draining you.
Yeah, and I was trying to live up to an ENFJ. I was trying to live up to this person that I wasn't, and that was stressing me out. But the cool thing about it is I could sense that wasn't me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I was like, you know what? I'm going to look into this a little bit deeper. And sure enough, that's not what I was. But if I had to explain it, that's the best I can explain it. And now that I know that I'm INFP, I'm an introvert, I have introverted feeling, I feel better about it. I don't feel like I need to be fake. I don't feel like I have to be put in situations that I don't feel comfortable with. And if I have to be put in a situation, I know exactly how to handle that situation now.
Right.
If the teacher calls on me and says, go up to the front of the class and talk, am I going to go up in front of the class and talk about small talk? I used to try to do that. Failed every time. Makes you nervous. It makes you have no confidence anymore. But now that you know you're introvert, I'm not going to go up there and small talk at all.
Right.
I'm going to go up there and talk about something mind-blowing and get these kids all amped up about what I'm talking about, and then I'm just going to keep going and going and going until their minds are blown. And that's a successful speech in front of the class. And now that I know that's my strength, I can go up there and utilize my strengths to maximum capability.
Right.
And that's why I'm really happy now, is because I know my strengths now. And I don't have to, I know my weaknesses and I know my strengths, and I'll go with my strengths. I won't go with my weaknesses. And if I have to go with my weaknesses, I know for how long I can go or how to get away with it.
Right.
And then kind of switch it to my strengths. But anyways, now that I've exploded all over this podcast, I'm going to let you talk about how you felt or thought. Because you're a thinker. That was a joke. About your personality switching, or if you even want to talk about me coming over to your house and being like, dude, I might be an introvert. Like, what was going through your head? You were probably taking it all in and being like, I wonder if I'm an introvert now.
Yeah, like...
Because we were kind of like convincing each other of our personalities too.
Right. And it was kind of... I don't know, it was really weird. I never expected that I would be INTJ versus ENTJ. And so... I figured that out, and it explained a lot of the things that I do. And when I started really looking into it, I read all these different pages on Google, just sat there like a sponge and absorbed it. And I realized that when I do that, that's not me trying to make things happen in the real world. That's me soaking information up and not really taking that much action. I have all this unprocessed knowledge inside of my head, and, in order for it to be processed, somebody has to call it. They have to ask me a question, and I know very quickly whether I know the answer to something or not. And it's just, I'm very aware of the fields of information that I'm familiar with, and if I'm not, I will straight up tell you I have no idea. I don't know. I can't give you any input. I have no idea what's going on with this situation.
That's actually a really good trait then.
Yeah.
Because it's hard for people to admit if they're wrong.
Yeah, and I mean, people can talk about things, but if I don't know anything about it, I'm a very truthful and honest person, and I will tell people, what I have on my mind, essentially. I don't really care if it causes conflict or anything like that. If I feel like I'm right and people want to try and spread information that isn't true, it's just a pet peeve of mine. And people can look at me and be upset about that, but... Like I said earlier, if there's dots...
You're a thinker. You don't give a fuck.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding. That's making thinkers look bad.
When I sit back and somebody says something that doesn't match up with the dots that I've already connected in the research that I've done, because I just told you, I'll admit when I don't know something about an area. But when I do research about a certain area and then somebody tries to tell me that they know they're right versus all of the research I've done... Usually I'm going to side with myself, and people can look at that as being closed-minded. No, I'm not closed-minded. I will change my mind if somebody proves me wrong. All you have to do is supply 2 facts, 1 fact to back up what you're saying. If I've done a ton of research and then I ask you for a fact to back up your opinion and you can't give me one, whose side would you take? You know?
I guess that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, and people will look
I mean,
at
I'm
that.
kind of the same way. I mean,
Yeah.
if people don't give me, I'll take in everything that people say,
Yeah.
but if it's, I won't even tell you if I feel. That's the difference between you and I. You'll tell people if they're wrong, and if you feel they're wrong. I don't. I let them talk, and I absorb it, and I take out what I think is true, and I let the rest go out without them knowing. It's like in one ear, out the other ear, and I'll just let them get their, I don't even know what you would even call it, get their happiness fix of spilling their ideas or opinions on me, and I'll act like I'm listening and be like, oh, yeah, and then I'll just go off and be like, that guy was completely wrong, you know, but
it's keeping harmony.
Yeah, that's what I strive to do. And I guess with that being said, we can go on to what was one thing that kind of blew the one thing that blew my mind and probably your mind was we didn't even know what the real definition of small talk was.
Yeah, we seriously didn't.
It was knowing the real definition of small talk is going to help everyone who's going to watch this realize if they're extrovert or introvert. People are like, well, I small talk. I can small talk. It's not about whether you can small talk. I mean, I can't small talk very well, but I can do it if I need to do it. It's kind of awkward, and I feel awkward. But it all started with me being at work and someone small talking me for 8 hours straight. Okay?
Yeah.
Someone who's an extrovert wouldn't even care. Right. They would be fine. At the end of the day, they'd be like, that day went quick. I don't know why it went. Oh, yeah, because someone was talking to me the whole time, and it was enjoyable. I'm sorry, but I hate saying it because it sounds so mean, but I don't want to hear it. I don't want to. I don't want to hear about your dog running out of the house. I don't want to hear about your mom trying to figure out a cell phone issue. I don't want to hear it. If you want to talk to me about how the sun is so many miles away and that there's a wormhole that made it so we can get there faster, I'm all ears. I would love to talk about something deep or something that I feel like, in a way, is bigger than just someone having a cell phone issue.
Right. And small talk.
That's what is small talk? How's the weather? How's Jerry doing? How's your son? All that is small talk.
Something that isn't extremely deep in thought. It's just something that's on your mind right now that you want to say. And it's kind of like, there's no deep meaning behind small talk. You don't really get to a whole lot of different places by small talk. Whereas if you're talking about thoughts that you both feel are important and you can debate, that's a completely different kind of conversation. And the intellectual conversations are usually more things held by introverted people, whereas you have,
they're like debating. I mean, you can't really debate about how the weather is today.
Yeah.
So in a way,
no, it's shitty outside.
No, I swear. I mean, I guess you could debate a little bit, but real in-depth debate is what I feel introverts really love. And I'm happy that I'm an introvert. A lot of people be like, oh, I'm an introvert. No, because everybody wants to be extrovert. Everybody wants to be out partying and shit. But I love the fact that I'm an introvert now. Right. I feel so much better knowing that I'm an introvert. I love talking about crazy shit. I would take that over how's the weather any day.
Right.
I can work on small talk, and there was one time I tried to small talk a girl at the bar before, and I failed miserably, dude.
Yeah.
Okay, so now think about the situation. Now that I know, am I gonna go up to that girl and try to small talk her? No. Just like a speech in front of the class, I'm not gonna go up in front of the class and start small talking. I'm gonna go up to her and start talking about something that I think she'd be interested in, maybe even personalities or something. Have you thought about personalities? And honestly, I won't sound like a fucking creep. So, me going up to her and being like, how's your night going? And then just kind of look at her like this.
Yeah.
How do you feel? Kind of creeped out, right? So I'm not going to do that, okay? And it's good to finally realize, that I'm introverted and that I fucking hate small talk. But I will small talk with you if you're my friend and everything.
Right.
I'm not a dick. I really ain't. Aren't. Are not.
I really aren't.
I'm really not a dick. That's just what I prefer. And if you small talk me for 8 hours, I might start showing signs of being irritated. Another point is like we always struggled with small talking before an episode of podcast. We should have known that. It should have been rather obvious that I was always saying, hey, we need to start off with some small talk. I wasn't saying small talk, but I was just saying we need to start off the podcast and make people feel like relaxed and things like that. And we're trying to do that, and we can't. Right. You know, 25 podcasts later, we still can't do intros very well, and we can't joke around and shit. We joke around a little bit, but we stay on task pretty well. We don't small talk for a very long time.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess we could move on to some examples of where people could be confused, and you know, we can like an example we had earlier. Why don't you put up ESTJ and ESTP again? With
oui, Capitan.
We can put that up with the text on it too.
Bossy today. Acting like an ENTJ over there.
Uh-oh, maybe I am.
Oh, God, we're laying down personality jokes.
Yep.
It's so stupid.
It's okay, though. Anyway, so now we used this example earlier, ESTJ and ESTP. One thing that a lot of people will do is they'll get P and J confused. They don't know if they're a judge or if they're a perceiver. Now, in this case, it makes a huge difference. If you look over at personality A, you're going to see that this is part of the guardian temperament. And what that means is they like structure and order and duty, and they dislike disrespect of authority. They value experience, security, and responsibility. So you listen to that kind of person, and then we move over to personality B. This is one letter difference, and their needs are freedom, action, and fun. They dislike rules and routine, and they value potency, creativity, and generosity. Could you get any different than that? Could you? I don't.
Not really.
You know, I don't.
It seems obvious now, but
yeah.
You know, we also have to think that some of the people that might watch this, it's not going to be that obvious. It wasn't obvious to us in the beginning, hence why we got our personalities completely
if you
wrong.
are emotionally vested in something, such as trying to discover your personality type, there are going to be certain elements that you are blind to, because looking at yourself completely objectively is almost impossible. It really is. You can't look at yourself impersonally because you're a person in your body. You know? So you're going to be blind to certain aspects of yourself, certain elements of your personality type. You may not agree with at first, but over time you may find that are actually very applicable to you.
The biggest thing that I notice about J and P now is because I'm a P and you're a J. You were always trying to make things structured. You're always trying to add, time limits to our podcast, and you're always trying to keep you move forward. If we're done talking about a certain point, you're moving forward. And you're the type of person, a judger would probably love math, because math has an ending. Math has a finish line. And P, I mean, shit, you could think of P as philosopher. Like P stands for philosophy. Because P, I love having things open-ended in almost anything. I like having it open-ended. If someone tries to tell me this is the right answer, there's no other answer, instantly I'm trying to fight that, because I want it to be open. I don't want things to have a final conclusion. I've always had a respect for math because it was one thing I couldn't say, no, what about this? But it seems like a lot of other classes I can do that in. And sometimes I have to tell myself, Steven, like, you're in class. Like, stop trying to... It's hard, because every time a teacher says, this is the way it is, if someone says, this is the way it is, everything's lighting up in my head. Like, no, that's not how it is. And I have to, like, bite my tongue. So that's one way you can tell if you're a J or a P. Like, are you the type of person that has to put a time limit to everything and loves filling out agendas and shit? You could look at an agenda for an example. Cody, you like to look at day, maybe week. I like to look at week, mostly month on the agenda. I love looking at the whole month. It doesn't have to do with looking long term. I just feel more comfortable seeing the whole picture and seeing it all open. Whereas a judger can be like, this is my day and this is how I'm going to plan it out. So that's how I look at those two things.
For sure.
But you wanted to talk about ENFJ and INFJ also?
Yeah, we don't have a chart for that, but I mean, you look at...
We kind of covered a little bit about it.
Yeah, if you want to pull up our chart system that we came up with.
Yeah.
You can look at INFJ. Oh, that's actually really blurry. That's hard to read.
We can give people a copy of those later, but honestly, the only difference between INFJ and ENFJ is...
Kind of like, go back to mine, ENTJ versus INTJ. It's the same exact type of thing. The only difference is that feeling is in the top.
It's flip-flopped.
Yeah. So the blue bar on each of these is going to be feeling, and then where feeling is at, you're going to flip-flop that with thinking. So, I mean, that's INFJ and ENFJ, just with different colors, pretty much. So,
I mean, we kind of talked about that earlier in the podcast.
Yeah.
Whether you're extroverted or introverted.
Yeah, exactly. And the biggest question to ask, if you're having trouble figuring out if you're introverted or extroverted, you need to ask yourself, do I like talking about things that have a lot of depth? And does my inner world of thoughts and ideas and memories and feelings, does that energize me? Do I get energized by being alone, or do I get energized by being with people? Because if you get energized from people, you're extroverted. If you love going out and partying and you love just being around a huge amount of people that you can interact with and see all these activities going on and be a part of it, if you're energized by that, you're probably extroverted.
And you kind of you can't get it confused with, well, I go to parties. What are you doing at the parties? Are you all over the place? Are you ready to meet new people? Or are you the guy that sits on the couch with a group of friends and hangs out with them?
Yeah.
You know, you could be an introvert and go to a party. It's just how frequently do you do it? What do you do at the parties is what you have to analyze.
Yeah.
And you could just take 4 different situations. How do I interact with my family? How do I interact in school? How do I interact in work, career fields? And how do I interact at parties? If you study all 4 of those, you will definitely know if you're E or an I.
Yeah, go back to that one real quick. That is our example. They can have the text on it. When we take a look at these, one thing I want to bring up is that one letter can change the temperament, the general outlook on life. And that's the biggest thing. If you're looking at, let's say you're confused between ESFP and ENFP, those two things, if you're an ESFP, you're an entertainer and you're part of the creator temperament. But if you're an ENFP, you're an inspirer and you're from the visionary temperament. So 2 different personality types, 2 different temperaments. When you are having trouble, let's say, figuring out whether you are a sensor or you're intuitive, look at the different temperaments, because there's not going to be a sensor and an intuitive in the same temperament. So you zoom out, you look at the big table of all the personality types, and you figure out which temperament sounds more like me. And by finding the temperament that sounds more like you just found your personality type. You don't have to just do it letter by letter. You can look at what temperament fits you the best.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's things for people to pretty much look out for and ask themselves if they're stuck between 2 relatively confusing personality types that are completely different, but if they're mirrored images, they're easily confused. And it just goes to show you how little we know about ourselves. That's another thing that blew my mind, is like, here I am thinking I know about myself, and I was completely wrong.
Yeah.
And it's like, I didn't really have any training on this until now.
Right.
Maybe something needs to be put in. You know, maybe some classes or something. But it's all right. Cody and I created the class because nobody else would.
Yeah, buddy.
Trying to inspire the young life perception. But basically, what we want to talk about now is some things you can look out for in the real world. We're going to try to come up with some on the spot, but I think we have a couple written down.
We have a couple questions too.
Oh, okay. We'll get to those at the end.
Okay.
How do you feel when teachers small talk? There's one way you can figure out if you're introvert or extroverts.
What was that?
You reading the questions?
Yeah.
One situation to look out for in the real world is find a teacher who small talks and see how you feel. How would you feel if that teacher was small talking for 3 hours? I know exactly how I would feel. I have a teacher who small talks for 3 hours. And every time they go to small talk, it bugs the crap out of me. Hey, I might lean toward an introvert. There's a way to figure out part of your personality. Another one would be, how do you feel when family small talks you? There's another situation of small talk. And like I said before, you can do it in business. You can do it anywhere. Like if I'm communicating with you, I should just have you small talk and see how, if I'm comfortable with it, if I can go with it on the flow, then maybe I'm an extrovert. So those are things to look out in the real world. Sometimes people can't, do what, like you gave us questions, like specific questions to ask ourselves. Sometimes we can't figure it out with those questions.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to go out in the real world and figure out, those situations. How do we interact with people and learn from those experiences, I guess.
Yeah.
Is what I'm trying to say.
For sure.
I mean, there's a whole bunch of them. Really.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't come up with them. I mean, I should because I have extroverted intuition, but I'm almost getting ready to be done because this has been an hour of spilling out everything in my head. But we should move on because I don't really know too much.
Yeah, we can.
I mean, we've kind of been explaining situations as we've been going on.
Yeah, we can just hop to the questions.
No, we have to do this game first.
You might be an introvert if.
Yeah. And if anybody has this will actually be kind of fun because if anybody has any introverted or even extrovert if you want, put them on the chat. But the way the game goes is, you might be an introvert if. And we're going to try to come up with some funny ones. And if you guys have one, we'll share yours and your name. Maybe even tweet it if it's really good. But
you might be an introvert if you feel like a dumbass because somebody caught you laughing by yourself in a room that only had you in it.
That's actually a really good one because you're thinking about everything and you almost feel like you're in your own world when you're an introvert sometimes.
Yeah.
And sometimes you'll talk out loud and someone will walk in and you'll be like, oh, shit. So, yeah, that's a good one. One that we've always been talking about this whole podcast, if small talk tends to irritate the shit out of you, you might be an introvert. And, you don't even have to be a mean person to have it irritate the shit out of you. I don't consider myself a very mean person. But sometimes Cody and I, here's a good one, we forget what path we even took to class. Like, it starts from our car, and then I'm opening the class door, and I'm like, wait, who did I see? Who did I walk by? What buildings did I walk by? How did I get here? Because you're thinking in your own mind. Like a lot of times I'll stare at the ground. So you might be an introvert if you run into people or poles or things like that. Because, I'll be looking down at the ground. God, the chair just broke. Sometimes when I'm walking to class, I'll just look at the ground because I'm in my own world and I don't want someone being like, hey, over here, I want to talk to you. Like, distract me, right. So I'll just not, I feel like if I'm looking at the ground, no one's going to try to distract me from what I'm thinking about. And then I get to class and I'm in class, Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'm still in my own little world, but whatever. So you might be an introvert if you forget how you got to class.
And you might be an introvert if you feel like you tell people things when you really don't. Like, you might think about it so much that it feels like you have actually told people what you're thinking and that they should understand what you're thinking, when in reality, you just thought about it so much you thought you told a bunch of people.
Hey, that's a good one.
It happens.
If you sit in your room and someone texts you to go out to places and your first thought is, man, I'm really fucking comfortable right here, you might be an introvert.
That could very well be.
Because an extrovert would be like, fuck no, I'm going. This is
Right.
boring as shit. Last one I can think of would probably be if you go to the gym with a friend because you want to go, it'd be boring by yourself. But then you split off and do your own thing and kind of have your own routine and put headphones in. Maybe your guy puts headphones in, even though your friend's right there. You might be an introvert.
Right.
So let's go to some of those questions that people gave us.
All right. First one is, compared to extroverts, how do you feel different from them being an introvert?
I wonder whose question that is. If Ustreamer695704, I'm curious who that is. Did you want to? I don't care who answers it.
Basically, there really is such a subtle difference that sometimes it's hard to tell. That's why we were confused. And it's not a difference so much in how we think. It's more of a difference of what we think is presented in the real world. So people will judge introverted people and say, oh, you're kind of slow because you can't process information as fast as I can. Or you're kind of a loser because you're not good at small talk. Or
You're kind of a loser.
Yeah.
Or a creep.
Yeah, either one. I mean, it's just misunderstandings that happen. So, being introverted is not a bad thing, and being extroverted isn't a bad thing. Neither of them are a good thing. It's just neutral. That's how it is. So it's really not a huge thing that there are introverted and extroverted people. It just depends on what society rewards, and if you think what society rewards is the best way, then go for it.
I wonder what this person's trying to get us to say. Compared to extroverts, how do you feel different from them? Honestly, how do I feel different from an extrovert? There might be times where I kind of envy them because they can just go into a situation and kind of be extrovert about the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I go, like, let's say I'm going into a store and the lady, hi, can I help you? Huh? No, I'm just looking. That's my instant response to that because I don't want to influence a talk. If I say, hey, my refrigerator broke and I'm looking for a new refrigerator, she'd be like, oh, okay, how'd it break? Oh, my God. I don't want to talk about all that stuff. Just let me go do my thing. So that's a big difference for me. A lot of times it's at work. I finish up my phone call. I have to do inbound sales. I finish up my phone call as fast as I can. The faster I finish the phone call, the less time there is for someone to ask me a question about how the weather is or how Jerry is doing or
how Jerry's doing.
Whatever they want to say. How's your dog? But if I finish that phone call as fast, that's how most of my life is. I avoid situations where there could be a lot of small talk. If I have to be in that situation, I'll go ahead and do it. I'll entertain people, but I can't do it for very long. And that's how I feel different from them.
And our next comment is, extroverts like in-depth conversations too, ... And that
sounds like
true.
He has his head down, or she. Just like, extroverts like in-depth conversations too.
I mean, honestly, that's true.
That's true, yeah, because you're both.
Yeah, everybody is both extroverted and introverted. It depends on what is happening during that. If you kind of feel drained by an in-depth conversation that drags on for an hour and a half,
you might be an extrovert.
Yeah, and if you just like an introvert, when they go out and they are in a party setting, for instance, that's draining. It doesn't mean that person isn't good at going out and partying. It just drains them faster, and it takes their energy away. Whereas an extrovert goes out to a party and it gives them more energy while they're in that environment.
So yes, they're right. Extroverts like in-depth conversations too.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, just like we like small talk. It's the same thing, but flipped.
Wait, we don't like small talk.
Oh yeah, it's like
we can do.
No, I don't mean. No, that is true because, well, then this person's wrong. Extroverts like in-depth conversations too. Do they really like them, or can they participate in them? Do they really, really, really like them, or would they much prefer small talk? I don't know that. That's something an extrovert would have to tell me.
Yeah.
So if I were to say what this person says as an introvert, that would read, introverts like small talk too. And I can honestly say, I don't.
Who knows, man?
So,
I mean, I don't know. I think that there are extroverts that would like to have, like, because if you have an extroverted intuitive type, I can see where they would like to have in-depth conversations about thoughts,
yeah.
but maybe not as much as someone who's an introverted intuitive, or, you know. But
Or a
and
censor.
there's varying levels of what people consider in-depth. You know, we do a podcast for about an hour and a half. That's pretty in-depth. But, I mean, you can have an in-depth conversation that lasts for 10 minutes. And
You know, this is a very good statement right here to me, because it says extroverts like in-depth conversations too. Well, how in-depth are we talking? Are you talking in-depth with two introverts, or are you talking in-depth with another extrovert? Are you talking in-depth with an introvert that doesn't know they're an introvert? Like, there's a lot of different, like, to me, that's a really good statement, because it's completely flipped from what we would say. Like, if I were to say it like this person said it, I would say introverts like small talk too. Wait,
Danny asked the question.
it's kind of weird that that person said it for her. So we kind of know who it is.
Yay!
So we're so cool.
I know, right?
We got so many people watching.
Thanks for
and it's
tuning
all
in,
our
guys.
friends.
We do really appreciate it.
God, I guess we know who our real friends are. But yeah, that's a really good statement. I mean, yeah, extroverts can like in-depth conversations, but then again, it goes back to how in-depth are we talking, and how long are we talking? That's a big question, because I guess I could like small talk too, but it's definitely not what I prefer. So I shouldn't say that I absolutely hate it, because I can do it. And if I hated something, I would just, I avoid it as best as I can. But I mean, if it's much easier for me to do with someone that I know. So if you took that statement and said, extroverts like in-depth conversations too, what about with a stranger? That'd be the best way to do it. How in-depth would you get with a stranger if you were an extrovert? Probably not as deep as I would get with someone that I didn't know.
Right.
I'd be like, whoa, what are you talking about? And I would start debating with that stranger. Now, flip side, how in-depth, like how much small talk would I do with a stranger? Probably none.
Yeah.
So
not very much.
that kind of I hope that helps you kind of understand, like, that statement a little bit better, because that's a really good statement. That's probably something I'll write down and maybe even tweet, because that's like the complete opposite of what something I would say, I guess.
For sure. Well, this has been a great podcast.
It's been long.
Yeah,
It's been fun.
For sure.
Sounds weird, but
We're introverted. Fuck it.
yeah, I don't care.
All right. Well,
Oh, you want me to wrap it up? Is that why? Is you giving me signals to wrap it up?
I want to wrap it up. Yeah.
You can be honest with me, man. It's all right. So basically, that was our Personalities Revisited podcast. It's going to be on YouTube as fast as I can put it on YouTube. And it will be commercial free on YouTube, which is also a great thing. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Team Young Life P. I kind of want to try to get this chart that we created up so people can look at that chart and maybe even print out a copy of their own so they can carry it around and stuff like that. Am I missing anything? Oh, recorded podcast, audio podcast would be on our website, younglifeperception.com. And we also post blogs twice a week, one each.
Yep.
And that's younglifeperception.wordpress.com. And now that you know everything about introverts, you guys can finally understand why I'm not so great at exiting a podcast. It's not that easy for me, but I'm totally cool with it. I don't even care. It's awesome. And INFPs are the greatest. Did I miss anything?
Nope. We are the Young Life Perception.
Peace, peace. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it, guys. I love all my fans. See ya.